Alright, so I'm mixing up some Hooker's Green. This is M. Graham. It's a wonderful paint. Some Hooker's Greens, especially sap green, with some manufacturers looks like a bright neon sign. It's terrible. This one, as you can see, has a really nice, I'm going to move this, has a really nice natural green tint to it. But one thing you can also do then is I've added water to the burnt sienna also. I'm going to add some burnt sienna here, that by mixing these together you get a really nice natural color. And the other color I'm using is an ultramarine blue. I've added some water with this. I've already added some water into there. And I always bring it out onto my palette. I never dip into a well and then go directly to the painting, because I could have a blob of 100% paint sitting on there, which I then will mess up my beautiful light wash in the background. One thing to do is always mix up more than you think you need, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting down, having a few inches left to go, and suddenly you're out of color and you have to start mixing while the whole thing is drying on there, and you almost always wind up with a hard edge. So that's my ultramarine blue, and when they mix together it's really nice, and that's going to be the idea on here. So I believe that should be enough. Probably not, because I do that all the time, which is why I'm mentioning it. Alright, so I think that should be enough. Alright, I'm going to use my 1.5 wash, and I'm going to use my number 12 here. So I'm going to get them wet, and I'm going to use just clean water. And the first thing I'm going to do is go in carefully, and I'm going to outline Now, one thing I want to make sure I do, because once I start dropping color into this, is make sure that I do get up. If I leave a space, like I come into here and don't get up here, there's going to be a white or light edge there that makes no sense. So I'm just going to come in. You have to get sometimes where you can see the light. The light will add a shine to what's already wet. Sometimes it pays to add just a little bit of a color, super light, and that can help you see where you're at. So this has a little bit of color from the water that I was just using, which is fine. Alright, I'm going to come in, I'm outlining, getting my water, and outlining. So once I've got that outlined, come down along here. I always come further, come out further. I don't stop right here, because if you're a little short in one little spot someplace and you want an exact 8 by 10, whatever the size happens to be, and you're a little short, then you've got to, when you mat it in closer, because you've got that tiny little space there that you never will be able to match coloring around it. So just always go beyond. Some people tape it off, which is fine to do. I prefer to not, and just go beyond. And sometimes that makes a beautiful painting to go beyond out here, and sometimes I'll mat it outside of that because it has this beautiful looseness to it. Alright, I'm going in with the larger brush now, and I'm going to use just pure water. I'm going to start up here, draw it across. To you on the camera, you can't see it, but I'm looking at it sideways. I'm seeing the gloss of the paper. Now the paper I'm using is 300-pound cold press, and because it's 300-pound, it's going to hold up to having this much water. If I was using 140, it would start to buckle right now. So this will buckle a little bit, but it comes right back when it dries to where it started. So I'm looking at it, and it looks like I'm going to add a little bit more. This is always the fun part because you're battling time. Once you get started, it starts to dry. Alright, so I think we're good on that. And right around there. Alright, so I'm going to come in with the 1.5. Wet my brush. I'm going to grab some color, and I'm going to start dropping it in different places. I am at an angle here. You can see how it's running downhill. That can actually help blend things. You just got to be careful that it doesn't get out of control. But this is a good angle for this. I'm going to go right up to it. And I like consistency. I would not go green here and then suddenly blue here, because this is behind the head. I want it to look consistent and no sudden changes that don't make sense. Alright. And the reason I'm not just doing this solid, because I want to be able to drop in other colors into these spots here and let them do their watercolor thing. Alright, so I need to come right up to here, right up to here, up underneath. There we go. Looking good. Let's get some under here, up in there. I could go back to the smaller brush, but this is working just fine. Take care of any runs here. Okay, got that. Alright, so now I'm going to go back in with some of my blue. I love the blue and green together. I'm going to drop it into places, overlapping. I'm not going to go like that. I want to make sure they overlap. It gives the feeling of foliage back here. There's something going on back here. Now this will dry approximately 20% lighter than what I'm putting on right now. There's a saying I've heard that if it looks just right, it means it's not, because it always dries darker. But the nice thing is we can always go back in and do another wash, or glaze as it's called, and that way you can get the exact value or darkness that you're looking for. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off, and it becomes a sponge, so I can pick up some of these spots in here. Alright, that has a neat look to it here. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of burnt sienna, just a touch here, so I can get a little more variety in here. It's going to mix with the ultramarine blue. They're actually complementary colors, which means they tend to neutralize each other and give a gray, a bluish gray or a brownish gray or a gray gray, depending on how much is in there. But I want to be able to have some variety in here. So just doing that. These could be branches, it could be bushes that are brownish, different times of the year. Not everything is always green. Looks good. It's still very shiny, which means if I want to, I could grab a little more of the green, go back in, as long as it's wet. Once it starts to dry, hands off. Need to remember to overlap. See my line right here? Need to overlap, or I could wind up with a unpainted spot. Alright, well that's looking nice. Now let me show you about using the paper towel. Dry paper towel that I can go in and I can do some things like take out some circles which are out of focus highlights in the background. I can also just bunch it up and come in and do some things like that. Very random. It adds a lot of interest to it. Then add some highlights. And our idea here is not to be completely realistic, it's to suggest. So I'm suggesting foliage in the background. So by doing this, it starts to fill in again, but you can see where it's lifting. It's adding a nice texture back there. Alrighty. And I think we're to a point. Make sure that I'm come in every place I need to. Now, little areas like this where it's overlapped, I can take my smaller brush with just water, take any excess out, like right in here. I can just wipe it out. Wipe it out. There we go. I'm going to wash it off. I'm going to get this little spot right in here because it's still damp. Go on it, dry it off, wipe it, and it's gone. So if I'd gotten any like on the bill or the face or someplace that was really important, that would come in handy. So that looks good. I'm just going to let it dry now, and we'll come back and decide what to do next. Alright, so this is completely dried, and as you can see it has dried lighter. So I'm going to do another wet into wet. So I'm going to go ahead and just use some clean water. I'm going to once again go around the bird. Again, the reason we're doing wet into wet is to keep everything soft, and it gives added time to do the washes without having a hard edge. There's nothing more frustrating than having a little section dry before you get back to it to overlap with a wash, and suddenly you've got a hard line in there that's virtually impossible to get rid of. Alright, so I'm outlining, and I can see the glare of the clear water in the light. So we're going to go up into here. And I'll use this brush. This is my number 12 round. And we'll do a little dab in there. Alright, that looks good. Now I'm going to get my large brush and do the wash across the large areas. Overlapping what I just did. Now the color I'm going to add this time, I'm just going to do green, but I'm going to do it a little darker to darken the value a bit. So I've mixed some green up. It's a little darker than it was previous, and I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to just do a wash across it, and I'm going to overlap as I come down. Now I can do it just like this, or I could still do the hatch work back and forth because we have a texture going on in the background, and that would be just fine like this. So it really doesn't matter. My goal is to darken the background just a little bit, and as you can see, the colors we laid down on the first glaze are showing through this because these are transparent colors, and so they're coming through, so it makes a really unique look with the different colors, the different shapes underneath. There we go, and I'll continue over here. Go right along. I could get a smaller brush if I needed to go along the outline here, but this flat brush is just fine for this. This will again, of course, dry lighter than I'm putting it on, but it will bring it to the value that I think needs to contrast the bird. And there we go. And a little overlap on the legs here really won't matter because it's so dark. It's darker here where the legs are. So, very good. So I'm going to let that dry and we'll go on to the next step.